I'm Anthony Gethers.
And I'm Greg Weiss.
And we are the hosts of Case for Bass.
Hi, this is Emily Davies, and I'm a professional bass player. And you are watching Case for Bass. It's not just a place for bass, it's a case for bass.
All right, Emily, what do you got?
Today we have a really special guest. We have Emily Davies, bass player and Federa owner, and we are all highly impressed with meeting Emily, and we can't wait to hear her story. Yep. Emily, I'm going to let Anthony start because he always kicks off the chronological questions.
Yes. So let's talk about your history. So when did you start playing bass and why? What was the motivation?
Wow. Yeah, I started in high school, actually. And I was, like many other musicians who've played into adulthood, I was a band nerd and played, saxophone. And decided one day I wanted to play bass guitar. And so my parents are both teachers. They didn't have like a lot of money. So my mom told me, okay, fine. But if you get more A's than B's and no C's on your report card, I will get you a bass guitar. Oh, well, wow. That was the first semester I ever did not get a C in math. So
wow.
I got mom went through with her promise, and I got a little toothpaste colored Washburn B2 4-string P bass. Okay. And I would say that's the fall of 1990.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I did that. Yeah.
Did you fall in love with it instantly? Was it something that when you grabbed the instrument, did you have an instant, this is going to be what I want to do for the rest of my life? I love the way this feels. I love how it sounds. This is what I want to do.
Yeah. And as a kid, I'm a bari sax player. So I'm just attracted to the low end. I love playing, the low end bass instruments. And I also realized that, music for bari sax is limited, even at that time. And if I was actually going to get to play a cool bass instrument, I would have to learn how to play this. And I did fall in love with it. I immediately got, gear acquisition syndrome when I was just a baby. So yeah, fell in love with it.
Okay. So when you say gear acquisition, give me a list of what you have at this point, or let's start off with what you acquired first.
Sure. I got as I mentioned, the toothpaste colored Washburn B2 that is now long gone. And when I got into later high school, I got a Carvin fretless bass.
Wow.
4-string.
Wow.
And didn't really know what I was doing. I just knew that I thought the sound of a fretless was cool. It's quite difficult to learn. I got that. And then when I got into college, I went to Belmont University and studied with Roy Vogt, who is an amazing bass teacher. He's a Carvin and now Kiesel artist. And so I got a Carvin 6-string bass while I was at Belmont University. So those were my first initial bass guitars. I went straight from a 4-string fretless to a 6-string thing full of frets on it.
Oh, wow. Okay. So Greg, what do you want to ask her?
Well, I always ask what type of influences when you were playing. A lot of rock guys, they get into Zeppelin, they hear the Beatles, the Rolling Stones. Did you jump into a band? That was one of my motivations, was the social factor of playing. I'd played guitar for a bunch of years, and eventually figured out that there was an end of the road for learning on that, and that playing a bass ended up brought me into a greater circle of people to meet. So how did that all come together between, you know, grabbing that bass in high school and breaking out?
Well, I grew up in a very small town in Northwest Missouri where there was kind of limited music, but we did have a local community arts theater. So I actually started playing professionally in the 8th grade. I played saxophone in local musical theater productions. We had a wonderful lady who wrote and produced musical theater shows. And so the first show I did on saxophone, and then I started playing bass guitar for her. So I jumped
Now,
right into musical theater.
now let me interrupt for just 1 second. So when you say professionally, was she paying you in 8th grade? Like you were getting salary?
I didn't get paid in the 8th grade, but I did get paid later. She was,
Okay.
that's why I said professionally. She put me in with the band who were all professionals, and I kind of just got thrown in the deep end with these guys, and that was a learning curve.
Okay.
So.
Awesome. So when you say now, let's jump into your college career. When you first started, when you went to college, what were you looking for when you went to college? Because some people go there to sight read, to learn sight reading.
Mhm.
Some people are learning to learn. They're going to learn variety, and they're playing. They're increasing their variety in playing. They're looking to meet other people and socialize, as Greg said earlier about the camaraderie of other musicians or other bass players per se. What were you seeking at the time when you went to school?
That's a great question, Anthony. I initially went to Northwest Missouri State and studied saxophone. And I went in for a performance major and realized after a couple of years there that I wanted to study bass guitar, and there wasn't a bass guitar program, I don't think, anywhere in Missouri at that time. So I moved to Nashville. And I guess in both of those instances, I was looking to, yes, build camaraderie, meet people, maybe meet people to start a band with, definitely try to play musical theater. Yeah, it was kind of all of the above, and I wanted to get a degree so I could just have that in case I wanted to transfer it to teaching or something else.
Okay, awesome. Let's talk about your past careers before you became a professional player. I noticed that in your bio, or I saw on your Facebook page, that you were once a police officer,
That's
and
true.
that you also were a professor.
We respect the blue.
Yep, at NYU. So that's actually cool. So tell us a little bit about your past history.
Oh my, well, that was a long history. I was a police officer for a total of, I think, 14 years. I did most of those in Nashville and actually earned a retirement while I was there. I didn't really realize it until I went to turn in my equipment that I was considered a retired police officer.
Wow.
And then I went to Maine, a small department in Maine, for about a year and worked there until I just realized I needed to be playing music. But yeah, the police career in Nashville, kind of a little known thing about Nashville, it's hard to make it as a musician in Nashville. I think there's limited performance opportunities that actually pay or pay well. So most people that I knew worked a day job in Nashville.
Okay.
And I just happened to pick a very demanding day job to work.
Wow. Do you also think that the surprising retirement package, do you think that allowed you the opportunity to become a full-time bass player?
I think it does. Yeah, it does. It will eventually, but yeah, it's definitely something that I am able to have in my toolkit, just to help me out, you know, and as I move forward in my bass career.
Okay. Awesome. Greg, what do you have in your mind?
Well,
Besides bass.
well, no, I always think about bass, but you know, the bass is always something that leads your life, in the sense that you can, talking about, you know, the less populated areas, and then how did you end up playing in New York?
That's a great that's a great question. My partner and I, we met in Nashville, and she is from the Berkshires area, and also originally from Queens. And so
Very
when
arty, very
when
urban.
she was when she was in Nashville, she kind of liked it, and she was kind of like, okay, but you don't understand the East Coast. Like, you actually might have it, like, you can actually probably play bass without having to be a police officer. So we made the move, and she was right. There's a lot more opportunity here on the East Coast in New York City.
Awesome. You're lucky that you have a supportive
we
wife.
find that from other
Partner.
guests is they were actually residents of Manhattan, and that they find is they don't leave the scene, they are the scene. And you know, these are players who are playing globally but reside in New York and find a lot of their opportunities here. So
yeah,
we always ask.
Yes. What was your very first paid gig in New York City when you first started coming, when you first came to the States? When you first came to New York?
When I first came to the States, well, you know, I feel like I'm
I know,
like I did finally arrive in America after years
you
of
went,
being in the South.
you went from Missouri, Nashville, so which are like foreign countries to a lot of New Yorkers. So.
Yes. So one of the amazing things, and I have to throw this out there, the guys at Federa, Joy Lauricella and Vinny Federa, amazing people. I actually met them at a Victor Wooten camp in Nashville, and also Victor Wooten, amazing person. And so when I came to New York, one of the first things I did was I stopped into the shop and bought Freya. And Joey hit me to this restaurant at the time in Brooklyn called Tambor, and owned by Nicky DeFrisco. He's a drummer. If anyone's played with Nicky.
Tambor, yes, I've been there before.
Yeah.
And that's what I found out about the whole Federa connection and the
Yeah, and just wonderful guys. And so I think Nicky hired me for my first gig. He said, "Hey, I need a bass player, you know, whatever." A few weeks later, and I said, "Okay," you know, and then that was my first New York City gig. It was courtesy of Mr. DeFrisco and Mr. Lauricella and all those wonderful guys.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Let's talk about your gear. You mentioned that you love to discuss gear, and so do you find yourself to be more of a, before we go into that, but let's talk about, do you find yourself, so some people are gearheads, some people love to collect amplifiers and guitars. I kind of was at one point, not so much now. So like, because it can be an expensive hobby. You know,
Yes.
If you're making money at it full time, that's different, but it can be quite pricey. So do you feel that you are a gearhead? And if so, like, what have you had in your life that let's go from your equipment list to where you started to where you are now, and what you got rid of that you might have regrets about. So, and you're on.
Okay, well, I did get rid of a Deering banjo. I think I've been through 3 banjos now, and I'm always like, why did I sell the banjo? Because it was fun, but I don't really play it. So that's the first gear that went away. I got rid of, I played Music Man Stingrays. I do have and you're gonna be mad at me though. Like when I decided I wanted a Federa, one of the ways as we all know, Federas are, you know, quite, you know, expensive. Unique. Yes. So I sold about 5 basses in that banjo to get this, and one of those basses unfortunately was the Stingray. But a
lot of stories about gear going on this page.
Yeah. I always figure I can get another Stingray. They keep making them. They make a wonderful product. You know, I might find one I like even more down the road. So yeah,
very likely.
So besides the Federas, my number one Federa is a bass I call Artemis, and she's a 5-string Federa I just had made for me, and she's actually currently in the shop getting a setup. So that's why Freya is here. Freya is also my favorite bass. She's a 4-string, obviously. Monarch. Okay. So I have those 2. I play a Yamaha. It was at the BBP 235 or P35. It's the pro level double B bass that they put out. And one of my favorite basses is I have a Fender Jazz bass that I've strung up with Damascus.
There we go.
Yeah,
there we go.
Good Fender.
We knew that was going to happen eventually.
Gotta have it. I've had that bass for about 7 years, and It's actually, Anthony, it's the color of your bass. It's that nice tobacco sunburst, classic Fender color. And, the way I describe it after playing a Federa, which are very modern, this is like, if you remember the old, like the Buicks from like the 1980s with the bench seats, it's like hopping in one of those old cars and you're just cruising down the road. It's just got that really nice feel to it. Great for playing Motown, jazz, old school stuff. And I kind of can't keep my hands off of the Fender either. So
okay.
It's infectious.
It is incredibly infectious. Yes.
You
So
can talk about your Federa a little. It's not a bass that most players own, play, try, and there's a lot of unique features that are sought after by many hundreds of players, and you have two, and
I do.
One's custom made for you. And tell us about the expressions that you get out of them, and what the contrast is to your Fender.
Sure, of course. Wow, huge contrast. So I'm not really a car person, but I imagine a lot of people are. So playing a Federa is like, let's say you normally own like a Toyota car or a Subaru or Honda. So a Federa would be like jumping into a Mercedes or an Audi and going, oh wow, this can really, oh, I didn't know that cars could do this kind of thing.
Pretty badass.
Yeah, and so it's like that's the thing for me. I personally, one of the reasons I love Federas is the way they feel. I'm a huge, like, I know exactly what kind of neck I need, what my string height is. I go back and forth between, hex core and round core strings, but I like the way the Federas feel. And then I can very easily dial in a sound. I can make this bass sound like a classic P bass if I want to. I can make it sound as modern as I want to. And you can see the way it's made on the back. It's
that thing's beautiful. Look at that.
Yeah.
It's like a mahogany back. And
wait, I'll say it. I'm high-fiving Greg. We're just doing a little high five. Look how beautiful that is.
Yeah, no, that's custom, one of a kind. You know what you're getting. You know what you're using it for.
That's stunning.
Yes.
Which I'm just going to interject on Emily here, going. My Music Man is I've had this about 2 years now, but my other basses are all literally from 1994. My G&L, my Fender Jazz, and I got I have a custom fretless. It's a Kubicki body, ESP neck, Bartolini passive pickups, Seymour Duncan passive J, and it's just one of those things. I mean, I've been loyal to my girls for 30 years now. And they're different tools, different bands, different tones. Granted, they're all classic rock, but they all deliver different identities. They all deliver different expressions. They all generally, I'm a flat wounds guy. I love my flats. I've merged into brighter flats. On my Fender Jazz, I have half wounds. I went to round wounds for a while, but I'm not a ringy. I don't do that. I like the classic thuddy flat tones. So that's just where I'm at.
Speaking
I
of
like
tones,
that too.
Yeah.
Like, what do you who are your biggest influences as far as your style of playing? Well, I'll look at it from two ways, because we already discussed a little bit of your instruments, but are there players that you really like, that if you'd say to them, I really like the way they sound, but I would love to hear them play on another instrument? Like, what would that instrument be, and who are these players that influence you?
Oh, wow. Well, I'll name off some bass players. Like, my favorite bass player of all time is Mr. Chuck Rainey.
All right.
Love his bass playing.
Nice.
Yeah, he's amazing. Of course,
I think too.
Big round of applause for Chuck Rainey, everybody.
Yeah, we one of the masters. One of the
absolutely.
Okay.
He's everywhere.
Just the most respect in the world for him. I listen to his bass lines and learn them, and I'm like, wow, where did he come up with that? He's just brilliant. Also, you have Anthony Jackson, who's,
another one. Round of applause for Anthony Jackson.
Out of this world bass player.
2 days in a row, Anthony Jackson.
2 days in a row, Anthony Jackson. That's right.
I know, these guys are amazing. Victor Wooten, of course. who I have like
Well,
the
round of
most
applause for
respect
Victor
for.
Bowie.
Yeah. Well,
And let's see. I mean, just so many, like Nathan East, obviously.
Round of
mhm.
applause for
And
Nathan
then,
East.
Yeah. No.
I'm gonna throw a shout out to Galen Dorsey because
Galen Dorsey, David Bowie.
Oh, yes.
she's
Round of applause
amazing.
for her.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's more. There's more. If you guys throw out a name, I might be like, oh, I love that person too. So, and obviously
That's
like Paul McCartney, so
it was the premise of this podcast is Anthony and I would talk on the phone for hours,
We
and
were
we would
honestly, we
have
were like high school teenagers. We were
we
literally,
would
we were like
well, we
babies.
used to be high school teenagers, but just
Yes,
not
at one
talking on
point
the
we were.
phone.
Not talking on the phone for hours and
And
about bass.
but the non sequiturs about how the conversation leads to styles and songs and riffs. We mention all these players, and then there are great players we mention, and we don't want to say the running line, but the running line is the bassist from Uriah Heep, and we're like, we don't know his name, but we know the band.
So we know the
And
band.
Anthony says, well, if he's really important, you would know his name. And I'm going, I know, but I don't know his name.
Yep.
And like a lot of the heavies are inspirations to all of us. For me, listening to Anthony Jackson was just it wasn't just the Paul Simon concert, it was the Al Di Meola records. And hearing how he plays the Federas and 7 strings, 8 strings, sometimes even the new videos he has, playing with Simon Phillips, and I'm gonna forget the artist's name on piano, but she's amazing. And he puts out these riffs, these vibes, these lines, this technique, all the theory. It's all in the package, and you don't hear him copying, let alone his riffs, his tones. And that's what inspires me. Just saying.
Yep, so awesome.
Yeah, I get
Well,
that.
Emily, in reference to your sound in particular, what are you looking to do when you play? Like when you grab your instrument, what's the goal that you want to accomplish? Whether it's doing a session or it's playing live, like what are you looking to accomplish with the audience?
Wow, that's a great question. I love to connect with the audience. And if I can just throw out an example of a great audience connection, I was able to play at the McHayden Theater last summer. That's up in Chatham, New York. Great theater, great productions. We did Jersey Boys. And during the song, December 1963, Oh What a Night, there's a part in that song where I'm just playing that cool bass riff, and the dancers are on stage dancing, and my seat was such that my seat in the pit, which is kind of off to the side, was such that I could see the audience. And during this one part in the song, every show, I would look and I would just watch the people's faces, and they were so happy because a lot of the people in the audience were from that era. Like they remembered when that song came out. And during the scene in the show, they're showing like when the Apollo space mission happened and other things that happened during the 1960s. And I was just grooving on that bass riff with the rhythm section and watching people's faces light up. I watched some people cry with joy because the music was touching them that much. And to me, that's the ultimate goal in making music, is if I can create a baseline that even if people don't understand why they're feeling that joy or that sense of happiness, even if they don't understand why they're feeling it, that they are feeling the bass, and it's in the groove, it's in the pocket, and it's connecting with the audience. That to me is the first thing, and a very close second is connecting with my drummer, connecting with the rhythm section, and getting in the pocket of that groove. But again, that goes back to the meet the ends of connecting with the audience members.
Awesome. I'm gonna actually, since you made me tear that one, give me a little bit of tear. And then I'm going to give you a round of applause for that answer. I love that answer.
Tear move.
Yep.
No, it's a great answer, and one of the things that bass players either consciously or unconsciously connect with is their presence. Is guitar players they're in a frequency where they're directly impacting somebody's ear, and the bass is where in the lower registers, and we're more of a what and a how with the feel in the lower tones then even when you said you played saxophone, there's a different connection between your expressions and your role in an orchestra pit or in a band. Is that part of when you grab your instrument and go for it? Is that into it also? Because just from my perspective, it's just about how, like, I know I'm low ending it, and I know my guitar player is going to cover all this range and all these tones and all these sounds, and I'm really like, I'm going to layer in as opposed to cutting on top. But then Anthony will tell you got to listen to Greg play, because he doesn't do that. He goes right for the guitar player's throat. So
as you should.
yeah, no, I do.
Actually, that's very true. Greg does not hold back. He's like, shoo! He goes right in.
I love that analogy. I love that.
Yep.
And kind of the way I look at bass playing, this is just very personally like an Emily thing. I look at it like a piece of art, like a drawing, or let's say a cartoon. And so to me, the bass line is if you take a Sharpie and you draw the outline of the picture. Like, what is this going to frame out? What does this picture look like? So let's say it's a Mickey Mouse picture. So the bass line is the outline of Mickey Mouse. You can tell it's Mickey Mouse, but then the other instruments come in and they fill in the color, and they might fill in the scenery. And what's Mickey doing? Is he is standing in a yard? Okay, is there something going on behind him? So that's what goes on. So I think that always enters my mind when I play whatever music, that I want to try and be that outline of the music for the band.
What I like is the analogy usually is whether you cross the line, and you're telling me you draw the line. I like that. I'm going.
Well, there's the police officer coming. I would draw the line.
Yeah, you draw the line. You don't necessarily cross it. You draw the line.
You draw the line, going, you cannot come over here.
We always learn something bright and new on CASE-4-BASS, because
I love that.
Because there's no one way of doing it. There's no one way of back and forth. And what we like is the individuality of all the players, especially from their experience and how they convey what they do. We're not in the role or the position of dictating it, and a lot of it's based upon how we feel and who we are.
Absolutely.
Well,
and I've heard.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I've heard from. Actually, from an esteemed musician I worked with at New York University, the bass players are like the salt of the earth, like the blue collar members of the band, kind of like you're the plumber. Like, you come in and you do the job. And I've kind of carried that around in my back pocket too, that we are. I mean, we are the blue collar members of the band.
That is true.
So, yeah.
Well, thinking about the idea of the working musician, the working bass player. Look, at the end of the day, I've seen bands do, like, I'm not a big acoustic performance kind of guy, because I'm a bass player, obviously. So when I see acoustic guitar players and I walk in and I go, okay, it's almost this kumbaya, gather around a campfire kind of thing, and there's no basis where I can't groove. I'm like, I'm not interested. I lose interest really, really fast in that way. So I like the idea of having that bottom end. I just find the bottom just, to me, like, when you watch the audience, if you have an acoustic guitar player with an acoustic bass player, or a bass player that's playing electric acoustic, there's a difference in the vibe. You'll see more finger snapping and more foot tapping. Yes. Outside of that. But if it's just like I saw someone do Horse with No Name. I saw one guy do a set with just the acoustic guitars, and I saw one guy do the acoustic guitars with the bass player, and the audience response was completely different with the bass player. I love that. I love that kind of thing.
I can offer a very similar opinion on that too. I've talked to other friends in the music industry about bands that don't have a bass, and I don't really enjoy watching those bands. Because to me, it's missing. It's like if you used a picture of like a pyramid or a triangle, without the base, you don't have that bass to hold up the rest of the band, so the triangle's smaller, like the music is smaller to
That's a
me
good analogy.
without
I like
that.
that.
Yeah, I like
But
that a lot.
it's exactly what you guys say. I completely agree. And a lot of the music I listen to and that I enjoy are music. It's music like Dar Williams, Mary
Or
Gauthier, a lot
Williams.
of I love these
Well,
guys. But yeah, and I think Dar does use a bass player occasionally, but most of these like singer-songwriters in the folk or the Americana realm, from what I know, like they go out on the road. And of course, a lot of times they can't
there's a
afford to hire a full band, but it's there's a kitty. We have our
yeah.
first cat. You get the award, Anthony. You get the cat award. But they
I had him
go
at
out
my
with.
feet. I had him at my feet. We were so close.
I still haven't gotten a cat yet. I'm actually surprised that one hasn't showed up. But yeah, they go out without without a band, which is understandable. But when they hire someone, they will hire like a violin player, and I'm like, no, you guys need to hire like an upright bass player. Hire some of that. The bass can do so much to enhance your music. So that's their own opinion though, but I really wish that some of those amazing, singer-songwriters would start bringing a bass player with them.
My experience is that they were bringing in cello players.
Yes.
Cello players, I call them baby basses.
Well,
bass juniors.
They have range and they have tonality. The two exceptions were Richie Havens brought a cello player with him, and it was the second one I had seen. The original one is I'm really gonna screw his name up. It's Bethany and Rufus, and Bethany is Peter Yarrow's daughter, and her cellist is Rufus Cappadocia, and he plays a 5-string cello, so he's got a low B on this thing. And
cool.
Juilliard, this guy was a street performer in Rome. He's a real free spirit vagabond musician. And when you hear him play, it's like literally hearing John Paul Jones and Jimmy Page at once.
Wow. Wow.
And his superior technique and his whole tone approach of playing low notes and high notes because of the bow is one of the real unique experiences that I've, you witness and you go, it's not a bass, but it is a bass. And he's covering those ranges. But when he goes into opening up that low B, you're like, well, it's on its own path and no one else is really doing it. Other cello players' jaws drop. It's not even, but he carved his own path. And that's like a lot of what we're talking about here. And it's just, it's not a replacement. It's just, it's a different tool, but like Anthony said, it's not a bass. It's like a baby bass.
Yep. Bass, I call them bass. It's funny because at the bass brunch, Mike Visaglia's cousins were there. Well, the cousin and the boyfriend from San Francisco. And he introduced himself as a cello player. So I said, but I thought everyone here played bass. He goes, well, I actually teach upright bass. So he's a teacher. So I said, okay, so you went from baby bass, you went from baby bass junior to bass senior. He's like, that's a good way of looking at it. I go, yes, you went from, I said, so you gave yourself a promotion to become a teacher. He was, it's kind of a good way of looking at it.
I love that.
Yep. All right, so my last question to you, or actually, as Greg and I both discussed, we usually have, this is our first of our 6,000 last questions. Okay, so what would you tell an aspiring bass player, someone who's coming up the ranks, who wants to become a working musician? Would you tell them, what would you tell them? Would you go through the pitfalls of it? Would you tell them the pros and cons? Would you be straightforward about it? Or would you say, yeah, it's all fine and dandy until it's time to pay the rent? I mean, what advice do you have to offer?
Oh, that's a great question, Anthony. I think what I would start with, if it was a young person, let's say, high school or younger, and if I was their teacher, I would make sure to teach them or make sure that they understood proper technique. Because if you start with proper technique on a bass guitar, it's going to carry you through for life. You start doing it right, and that proper technique, and to read music, right? So you have to have the proper technique, and I would definitely drill into their heads, like they have to be able to read music, and then also to learn to play by ear. So I think those three things are going to help people, young people, learn faster and get gigs. Also, I would tell people to, diversify. Don't just get stuck into one type of music. Like, oh, I want to play slap bass. I want to play funk. Great. I love funk, but funk's only going to go so far.
Sure.
And so I would tell them that. And yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the market you're in. If I was in Nashville, I would tell people, great, play the bass, but if you want to eat, you're going to have to get a secondary trade.
Okay.
Be a bass player, work it, play all the gigs you can. If you get that wonderful gig that pays the bills, then congratulations, that's amazing. And certainly there's a lot of people doing that, but also I've met a lot of professional musicians in Nashville that are locksmiths, and believe it or not, there were a lot of musicians on the police department there.
Okay.
Nurses, teachers, other things.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's how I tell people, like go ahead and diversify. Don't just get stuck in one thing and have tunnel vision with it.
Okay. I want to comment on your locksmith comment. Is there ever a situation where you had to arrest any of the locksmith becoming burglars, breaking into?
No, but I certainly had to call plenty of locksmiths for
Okay.
people that would lock their keys in their car. The department stopped letting us open cars for people, so we'd have to call Papa Lock. Was
Okay.
the name of the
Papa Lock.
company.
Papa Lock's also Papa Lock, pop and snap bass player as well.
There you go. Yeah. You never knew when you were going to meet a musician getting somebody's, dog out of their car. So.
Okay. All right, Greg. Greg, do you have number two of our last questions?
Where are you currently playing, and what style of music is it? Are you a reader? Are you a freeformer? Are you band leader?
Wow.
Tell
Okay.
us.
Yeah. So, what I'm really focusing on these days is musical theater. I am a reader. And if you ask me why I love musical theater, we would be here for another hour. But
Why
I
do
do
you
love
love
reading.
musical theater?
Yeah, you asked the question.
That's number three of our last six.
I mean, I love it because, think about it. I don't have to pick out what I'm going to wear. I just wear the same thing every night, black, straight, basic black, sit in the pit. But seriously, I love, as I stated about, Jersey Boys, I love being able to interpret and play music, either that someone else has written, that's a modern, full, composed show, or I love playing what's called the jukebox musicals, which allows me to jump in and pretend I'm part of the Jersey Boys, or some Motown bass. We played the Marvelous Wonderettes. It's a smaller show towards the end of our season, and it was all of these great, like, Motown flavored and Motown songs from that era that composed for women. So that that's fun. I love doing musical theater. I love to read. I also, just love to play with artists. Like, if somebody has their own material, they need a bass player, I love coming in and writing bass lines and making some great music for that. I've played with this artist in Maryland called Madam Who. We used to be in a band, Audra and the Antidote, back in the early 2000s. And she hits me up every once in a while to throw a bass line on a song she's written, and it always turns out cool. I love doing that.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's kind of it. I just like playing bass.
Okay.
Well, so do we.
Yeah, we enjoy playing bass. So, number 4 question of our last questions: how do you go about getting your gigs?
Usually, for me, it's word of mouth.
Okay.
I also do what I think a lot of other pit musicians do. I check out playbill.com. It's a great resource for anybody involved in musical theater, not just for musicians, but for anybody who's interested in working in that area.
Does that mean you're going to shows, or you're reading about shows? Because you get the playbill when that was my former life in the printing business, was the playbills.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Well, I do go to shows, but as we all know, Broadway shows can get pretty pricey. So, I find the ones I can go to. I love going to the shows, but there is the playbill.com website that actually advertises for musicians. And yeah, absolutely. 100%. And yeah, not just musicians, but any, like if you work in tech and theater or costume wardrobes, if you don't work as an usher, you know, a lot of regional gigs are advertised on there. So it's a wonderful resource.
Awesome.
Last question. Are you a union player?
I am. I'm a member of the AFM.
Okay. Awesome. I was many years ago, and I realized that I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to rock. So I ended up getting out of there and just traveling across the board.
Cool,
Yep,
cool.
so, awesome. Emily Davies, thank you very much for being on. Bass player.
Awesome.
And
Thank
Guys,
Cat
thanks for having me
Very
today.
informative. It's great to meet you. And
Absolutely.
welcome to the family.
That's right.
Thank you.
You're now part of the. You are a case for bass.
I love
you,
it.
You make
Yep.
the case for bass. It's like
Right,
Judge
you
Judy.
just made the case for bass.
It's
Awesome.
like Judge Judy.
All right.
I love it.